Welcome to 80s TV Ladies, where we look back in order to leap forward. Here are your hosts, Susan+lambert+hatem and Sharon+johnson.
Hello, I'm Susan.
And I'm Sharon. Welcome back to part 2 of our marvelous interview with Bruce Boxleitner, star of Scarecrow and Mrs. King, How the West Was Won, Babylon 5, Tron, and so much more. This episode is loaded with insights into his time on Scarecrow and Mrs. King, as well as stories from Bruce's early days on Gunsmoke, Policewoman, and Baretta. Now, we left part 1 on a little cliffhanger where we were just about to show Bruce a noteworthy scene from Scarecrow and Mrs. King, season 2, episode 21, entitled Burnout. Enjoy!
Let me share my screen and see if I can pull this off.
We have faith, Susan.
I know you
can do it.
I know.
Okay, here we go.
Right, here we go.
Oh my God.
Okay, let me see, make sure the sound's up.
What was I doing again? I was faking as though I was doing a agent burnout.
Yes.
But it was all to entrap somebody. Is that this guy?
Yeah, this guy is sort of trying to recruit you for the big bad. And, but nobody knows. And Amanda has come in going, you have to come back to the agency and Melrose wants you. And
well, let's see how this goes.
Let's see how this goes.
This is Amanda.
Hello. I came to talk to you about that report from Mr. Melrose.
Yeah, well, I'll do it later.
No, you really need to do it now. It has to be turned in on time, you know.
Time? Time? Amanda, I have got nothing but time. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It didn't hurt.
I'm sorry.
You can move your hand.
Amanda. No, Amanda. Look, Jack, I'll talk to you about your friend later, huh?
That's stuff later.
Amanda! No.
It's all right. It didn't hurt.
I hit you. You just gotta stay away from me. You've seen what I've been doing lately. You've seen what I've been going through. I am poisoned at the agent. Then let me make it easier for you. Just don't help.
The ugly side of Lee Stetson. Yeah. So what did you want to know?
I want to know how you guys managed that last slap, right? Do you remember what your discussion was or what you guys worked on to do that moment? Because it's so... What's so great about Scarecrow is it's funny and goofy, and then every once in a while it comes across as very real.
Yeah, it can turn on a dime right there, as the old saying is. I think what we discussed was Kate said, hit me. It's written in, he slapped her. And that stops it, man. I mean, everybody just freezes. And he realizes he's just, and by the way, I just saw that I blew my cover for a moment there.
Yeah.
That the other guy's watching, and momentarily he blew his cover. He was stunned by what he had just done to her.
Yeah.
Kind of look on her face, right? So, it was, if you'll remember, tap, tap, bam. That's how she had to gear herself up for it. I didn't hit her. It sounded more like it did than the actual concussion of it.
Yeah.
It was no fun. I didn't enjoy doing that at all. I would never do that. You're always trained to make it look like it's a hit and you're missing. When you're doing fight scenes and stuff like that, no matter with whom, you don't want to hit somebody or get hit. And but there was no way to avoid that. So she was an absolute marvel at those type of things. She was willing to do things physical like that. I don't think we did it. We didn't do it more than once, that angle.
Right.
Everything else we could do with the trick of the camera. Because always, and when making contact with somebody, and when you're doing a fight, or even that, she's looking me right square in the eye. I'm looking at her right square in the eye. I have to let her know it's coming. I have to telegraph in my eyes that I'm going to be hitting her. So it was, and you notice it was don't, bam. She knows on number 3, it's coming. And she would also sell it. But that was a real stunning look on my face.
It was.
That was great.
You know, and her. Funny you found that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he's, begging her not to. Then he has to, Lee had a very short temper, oftentimes, especially with Amanda. It was only because he had deep feelings for her and he was a protector, he wanted to always protect her from everything. And, but then inner voice is fighting him doing that too. Yeah. So it's a complex character. I always thought I came off as such an ass in the first couple seasons because why are you so mean to her all the time? Well, I wanted her to get the hell out of here. I mean, this was an accident, never meant to happen. But it was a desperate move on Lee's part at the train there,
and on some level, he wanted to protect her, as you were saying, because he didn't think that this was something she should get her involved in.
Absolutely, right from the get-go. And Billy's going, "Oh, I think I found you a new partner." and oh gosh, who had the best time was Mel Stewart over in Europe, because Mel was a hell of a. What did he play again?
He's a saxophonist.
Saxophone, jazz musician. And during our break there, when we were stuck there, and that, believe me, it's a wonderful place to be stuck. He was sitting in local clubs, jazz clubs.
Wow.
Jazz was all over Munich. They really loved it there. And he fell in with a bunch of guys that were standing in the lobby of the Munich Hilton. And they were all like, they all had British accents and everything. And then he always said, "Man, it's the strangest bunch of brothers I've ever met." Anyway, but he fell in right away. Mel was all about you. That's all he ever talked about. And he was really good, very, very, very good. And he sat in on a bunch of jazz clubs around town. So
that's amazing. That's
and
amazing.
a funny guy. And Martha, I teased incessantly. Martha was like one of my sisters. I was the oldest of 4 kids, and all of them were female after me. So I could be living hell for them, or I could, I was big brother that could go and fight their battles for them too, if they needed it. And I was the one standing there at the door when the boy came to pick him up for a date. My dad didn't even have to do that. So, but with Martha, that's the kind of thing. We still have the same. We haven't changed a bit. We still banter with each other like that,
Yeah.
And, but every Friday night, the last scenes before the weekend, when we were back in LA, I was always in Billy Melrose's office. And Mel always had these scenes where he had dialogue as long as your arm on the script. And he was always great at it. But he that he was like a Korean War hero. Mel was.
No.
It was the Korean War, yes.
Wow.
Yes, he did. And he never talked about it much. Most veterans don't. But he'd been in some really bad stuff. And he would sit and tell me about that once in a while. And we had some long time to sit and talk. But inevitably, then it would go back to jazz. And so they were always in Billy's office. And Mel used to slaughter the dialogue sometimes. He would have all the spy jargon to do, all the, or the government agency, and they're always in acronyms and things like that. I kept going, I'm glad I don't have these lines. and then you've got the crew sitting around going, are we going to get out of here? Oh my God. How many takes is this? You never knew that when you saw the finished product.
No.
I mean, he just was always great. And, but Friday night, it'd been a long week.
Right.
And he has to come in and he had to, what do we call it? Laying the pipe or something. He had to tell us everything we're going to do.
All the exposition.
In that episode. He's carrying all the exposition. And that is not an easy thing to do. So, and I would stand off the camera, right next to the camera, and make faces at him and things like that. I mean, we were just crazy. We would do anything because we were tired. We had long hours on this bloody thing, Back then, I always say episodic television, maybe not so much today, but the schedules we had to keep were so that we would work 14, 15 hours,
Mm-hmm.
Kate would have to get in an hour and a half to 2 into hair and makeup every morning.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, and I don't blame her, she was our headlining star, and she got to leave. If she was in at 5:30, she always left by 6:30. So I have a fight scene to do at 7:30 at night when you've just, after a long week or something like that. They always save the action. The poor stunt pups, they would all sit around playing cards or whatever, just sitting around waiting. And oftentimes it happens because then they want to rush the action. The very stuff you don't want to rush.
Right.
Somebody's going to get blocked. Somebody's going to fall down. Something's going to happen. We were luckily throughout all of that. I don't think one time an actor leaned into my stunt double's punch. He leaned in a little too far.
Ouch.
Broke his nose. And that is the stuntman's credo. Thou shalt do no harm to the screen actors guild, And, but we had little things like that, like tying me on an airplane, a biplane going up. That was me hanging on that.
Was it? What about you on the helicopter?
That was Gary.
That was an amazing stuff.
They had a helicopter up, and I hung from it, flying stationary.
Yeah. Okay.
And then they jumped me and let me jump down. Gary got a stunt award for that. It was a marvelous thing. They took him through a river. They took him through trees. They took him through a fence.
It didn't look safe at all.
Thing. It was not safe. And just to tell you what kind of a madman he was not cabled to that thing.
Nuh-uh.
Oh my!
No.
What?
Here's the reason why. Here's the thinking. This is insane. What if something happens to the chopper? I'm hanging by it, cabled to it. What if the chopper goes awry, something hits and then I go down with it? I'm much safer jumping free. And I'm going, what's the third choice? I mean, what do you mean? You're falling either way. It could be a half a mile up or something. Who knows? You said, well, I could at least pick my own where I was going to be found. But that's how crazy that was. That was nuts. Because he ran, if you'll look at that thing again, he ran and jumped on it.
Yeah.
And it took off. There was no way to clip him on to a thing up his sleeve.
Well, I thought that they cut and then they clipped him on.
No, I don't believe there is a cut in there of him actually taking off.
Yeah.
And they shot all of that with another chopper following them, handheld.
It's a pretty incredible stunt. And
it is a wonderful stunt. Yeah. And our chase scenes, think of her car.
Yeah.
The action that little old station wagon went through. Oh my God.
Bus stops. You guys took
I made everything. Oh yeah, we did. And what would have been a fun day for you all to be standing out in the street in Toluca Lake, California, which is right there.
In Burbank. Near Burbank.
Burbank. And we use that main street so many times. Always, I might add, trying to avoid a palm tree in the picture. We're supposed to be in Virginia, not Florida and not California, okay? Or Tahiti. No, there. We have palm trees everywhere, so they would have to avoid that. But we would do those scenes in Mrs. King's car or my Corvette, towing in back of a camera truck. Okay, and the whole camera crew's on there. Director's sitting there. You got 50 people hanging off this truck. It's got all kinds of pipe railings and stuff, for equipment to hang on and be secured to. And you're shooting this way. That was a long day, and it was all of that fun dialogue where we were just bantering back and forth. We did those scenes 50 times.
Going up and down.
Yeah, just changing out the angle, depending on how elaborate the director wanted to get. Some didn't really care. Some wanted to get really artsy and fun and complicated. But yeah, those. I think they had one or two of those cars, or station wagon, and we had two. I know one of the sound producer, he bought the last Corvette.
Well, and then David
has
recreated it. David.
Yes. I'm amazed at this guy. And that's a great book, by the way.
It is a great book.
Give it a nice little, you know, everything you want to know about the Scarecrow and Mrs. King, it's there. It's a good doorstop, too, as well.
No, but that is a book, you know, and sometimes the fan books are made, you know, quickly or, you know, this one
is meticulously detailed and it's accurate in every way. He's an amazing fan, and I think he's been a great asset to the fan club.
Yeah.
You know, I know Jeanette would agree. But yes, he restored, what was that, an old, what was it? He would know, and it's in the book, The Ultimate Fan Guide. Oh my God, that was so much fun. Scarecrow was at that point, that was the real big time. So far as being on network television, you're one of two stars and the rest of the cast. A lot of people's paycheck was riding on you two showing up and delivering the goods and the audience enjoying those goods. Everybody had to contribute, but in the end of the day, Katie and I had to, there were days I didn't want to do it. There were days that she was tired too. I think if we fought anything, and that's episodic TV, like I said before, you're always tired. You're always working against the clock. Time is not your friend, because we had to make a movie every 7 days.
Yeah,
because they already had a time slot. You know.
Yeah.
We were picked up once it was started on the air. We had it way ahead. So. And then in those days, I'm always amazed now because I'm doing this series. It's 6 episodes. They call that a series. I call that a two-parter, and maybe a 3-parter.
Is this the Blue Ridge?
Blue Ridge, yeah. And they shoot that in North Carolina, in Charlotte, and in the Blue Mountains there. I've only got one more episode. My character returns.
Oh, good.
But what I'm saying is that they're all young. Sarah Lancaster's been around, and so is Jonathan Schick. But and they're going, wow. I said, we used to do 22 of these.
Yes.
Even. And this is where I come off sounding like the grumpy old man, you know. Oh, back in my day, kid, you know. But I'm right there now. It's so different today.
Yeah.
It's almost unrecognizable in how we shoot now. I have to say, I loved it the way we did it. We had fun. Nobody's having fun anymore. I lament this, by the way. This is because we have cell phones on the set. Everybody's on their cell phone. No one's talking. And I come in and they're going, who is this old geezer laughing and joking and telling stories? But that's what we did. And that's what made the Scarecrow and Mrs. King set so much fun. We didn't all hide in our trailers or dressing rooms. We were on the set the whole time, sitting around a circle of chairs, telling hysterical things and telling jokes. And Mel was always one of the ringleaders. He and I were the real ringleaders of all the mayhem that went on that set. If he picked it up on me or I picked it off of him and went with it, it was fun stuff. We played practical jokes too. Martha was always outraged by them. And Kate would just go, oh, I don't have time for this. Anyway, but we had fun. I'm 74 years old now. Maybe I'm just getting a little tired. I've been doing this 50 some years. I love the job, but as a younger actor, you've got more zip, you know. And I'm not done by any means. I've just done with Seth MacFarlane, the Orville.
Yeah.
Was that part in the Orville the first time you had to go through that kind of full transformation that they put you, the mask and everything that they put you in?
Yes. Yes, Sharon, it was. And the only reason I did this, having done all those years of Babylon 5, I so respected the actors that had to be there at 4:30 in the morning to get in all that glue and And I had a cowl. That initial head, I had to squeeze through. It scared the crap out of me because I'm a little bit claustrophobic around the head thing. I couldn't do scuba diving and stuff like that. And to be inside that at first was a little daunting. But it was because of Andreas Katsoulis and Mira, all of them that had to, Billy Mooney, all of them had to do that every day. I said, I want to challenge myself. And when Seth cast me in that, I went down and I had a meeting. And so I dressed as president. Well, I dressed as the president. I dressed in a suit, tie, and shirt,
Mm-hmm.
And I walked into an office down on Sunset, and where's everybody? And there was a little camera in the corner, and I didn't know that Seth was on the other end of that camera, over wherever he was. He could have been in his living room. I never saw him, but this voice comes out. Boy, that was really great, Bruce. That was really great. I'm thinking, and I want to know your opinion now. I'm thinking he's an alien character, the last of his race. Because, by the way, on that set, there were no other Smurfs like me. I mean, I nicknamed myself Papa Smurf, and so that they knew who I was. Because Ted Danson was on that with us, and Garber, and all kinds of people. That the reason I bring up Seth too is that he's a genius of a guy, and there were a lot of times sitting there. Because the head was so big, I couldn't read a book or anything. Seth was a huge Scarecrow and Mrs. King fan because he loves 80s. So the 80s ladies will get this. He loves the theme music of all those shows back then, like Mike Post and Arthur. So Arthur Rubinstein did the dun 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 dun. That song. Seth played it right there. He had like this little piano type thing. He could play that thing. And I talked about Arthur and how we had done at the Greek Theater. We had done the Telltale Heart. Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart with a 60-piece orchestra. I did it with that one Halloween night, or the weekend of Halloween. And it was packed and it was beautiful. But Arthur introduces me with the, to walk out on stage with the theme from Scarecrow and Mrs. It was just a joy, wonderful joy. But it was fun that way sitting there because I probably talked about Scarecrow and Mrs. King more than anything. Here I'd done Babylon 5 and everything. Yeah, he liked that, but he wanted to talk about
interesting.
We might everybody like that.
We might have to get him on the show.
You should, because he knew it immediately. And he was one of these people who said, I sat there with my mother and we watched every episode. So his mother brought him to that show. That was a big bonding experience for him. And he wanted to know all about that, just like I'm talking to you now, how did we do this and how do we do that? And I said, it's very different than today. You would have your whole cast would be sitting down here with us now instead of separated all over the place, off doing their own thing. Mm-hmm. We'd all be down there. And you know what? The whole reason I bring that up is actors are sponges. We're these creative little crazy people, and we feed off of each other. And the closer you can get, and this is what and I want to say, this is what I'm saying to my younger generation here, who seem to find TikTok and everything else more fascinating than the person sitting across from you, is that, and there's a place for all that. I'm not saying, but I'm saying there's something that I saw lacking, and I've seen it at every show that I've been doing, is that everyone's all wrapped up in their own little thing, and instead of exchanging with each other and and you know what? You stand up and you walk all of that right into the set with your material. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. That connection,
that's how that cast worked in Scarecrow. We all knew each other. And I'm always longing for that. I think I'm always an actor in search of a new family. And I love that because that became family. Even though we were only on 4 seasons, we spent so many hours. I spent more time with Kate probably than I did my own wife. 2 months of it there. We would shoot 13 episodes, and then we would anxiously wait from the network the back 9.
The back 9.
So that we would have 22. That was everything. It was called the back 9. Are we going to get the back 9? And I've been on too many shows where we didn't even get the first 13 done. You know how many unsold pilots I have? I have an MTM pilot made at Mary Tyler Moore Productions called Sporting Chance, which I thought I wished had a sporting chance. I had many pilots after Scarecrow, and none of them landed. I think George Clooney claims he's the king of the unsold pilots. Well, Buster, I'm a runner-up then, I have to tell you, because I had a number of them. Scarecrow could have easily gone, been an unsold pilot. But Kate Jackson had still such heat from the Charlie's Angels. That shows you what a cultural impact that show had, that, we were a shoo-in.
Yeah.
Hell, that Yellow Rose didn't last, but I think if it lasted one season.
It was.
But Sybil found her own Scarecrow and Mrs. King.
She did.
They got to be a little more adult than we did. We could shoot people, but they had to be wounded. I don't think, did I actually ever really kill anybody? I can't really remember. At 8 o'clock, even if there was a car wreck, you had to see somebody struggling to get out of the wreckage.
That was my favorite thing about 18.
That was the 18. They do these elaborate stunts and then they get up and stagger around. Yeah. Okay, he's alive. That's okay. He's just a bloody mess, but he's okay.
Get him a Band-Aid. He'll be fine.
We need to take a break, and we're all going to turn on our air conditioning and drink a thing.
Absolutely.
And we'll be right back.
We're back. Let's jump right in.
So your first television show was Mary Tyler Moore.
Very free. That's how I got my Screen Actors Guild card. My entire paycheck went to getting my union card, but that meant that was gold to me. I never had to go through those hoops. The producer, Ed Weinberger of Mary Tyler Moore, he owed my agent a favor. And he read me. He said, bring the kid in, I'll read him. I'm going, that's very highly unusual. Producers don't do that. I mean, he didn't have writer, producer, or anything like that. He was just, so this guy, John Crosby, brings me in. And I'd only been out there probably a good part of a year. That's not much, okay? I had brought enough money with me. I had done the Broadway show back in Chicago again, and I kind of had what the Old West we called a grub stake, And so I had enough to live on. So Ed reads me, and it was just a couple of lines. It was Murray's daughter got a summer job at the news studio in Minneapolis, and she was a total screw up. But nobody had the heart to tell Murray's daughter she's not going to make it. Even Lou couldn't do it. He'd go in there, I'll tell her, and then, you're just a little darling, aren't you? And he couldn't. And so I was a mailroom boy, that kid that Ted Knight brought in. Well, look who I found here. He brings me in. That man I probably almost went in my pants a couple times. I laughed so bloody hard that I just couldn't. The man, you got to admit, he was, when you watch the Mary Tyler Moore show, that guy was absolutely hysterical, and I got to work with these people. Mary, she was so wonderful to me. And Rhoda, Valerie Harper, really befriended me. She sat and talked to me forever, wanted to know everything about me, and how good and what plans we had. And it was on that studio lot in CBS in the Valley that I wandered into. The big wide doors were open on the sound stage, and I wandered into Dodge City, Kansas, Gunsmoke. The interior of the western town was on a sound stage. Dirt street, wagons, stagecoaches, saloons. There was Miss Kitty's saloon. There was Matt's office. There was Doc, his office up in the, and I'm wandering around. They'd all gone to lunch. And I'm wandering around going, I'm going to do this one day. I'm going to do this one. But I got it did.
Yeah.
John Matley, the executive producer, said it was the worst episode they'd done in 15 years. But they cast me, and somehow my future was linked to that because it was actually James Arness who gave me my biggest break ever. I would have never gotten to Scarecrow and Mrs. King, probably. Seriously. I mean, I would have never. I hadn't had that How the West Was Won, that series under my belt. And so it's amazing. You meet maybe one person in your life could change the direction. And you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe all of us have that. Somebody that, whether it was advice or some decision made, if he'd liked Richard Hatch more than me for the role, I don't know where it'd be.
You might have ended up on Battlestar.
I might have been on Battlestar Galactica, of course.
Instead of How the West Was Won.
I
loved you on How the West Was Won, though. That's the first time I remember seeing you on television.
And that was my springboard.
Yeah.
I couldn't have walked in. I couldn't have had any clout whatsoever with CBS. Somehow I just wandered over to CBS because I think Mary Tyler Moore was a CBS show. I think it was.
It was.
TM.
Yeah.
And they were the biggest company on that little lot there that used to be Republic Studios in the old days. Kate and I, we had a very interesting relationship in that. I was married, child, and that. And I lived out of town, way north of the valley, and studios, and she lived over in Beverly Glen. So we never did anything really, personal. I mean, so far as hanging out and things like that. We did enough of that on the set for about 14, 15 hours. But Europe, we all did. We all hung with each other much, much more because we didn't have our loved ones with us until later in the trip, then they came. And but Katie and I think we had a relationship. In our relationship was kind of, it could be a little zesty. I mean, it could be a little exciting so far as, I had to watch my steps sometimes. I better toe the line. Who was the boss here? She was Ms. Kate Jackson. So I had to behave myself, or I'd get taken to the principal's office.
Wait, now who's the principal? For Kate Jackson, or did she send
you
somewhere?
The principal.
She was the principal, and she sent you to the principal.
Oh, if I did something, and it wasn't ever that. You heard stuff between Sybil and Bruce that became legendary.
Yes.
None of our stuff was like that. It was always like a little thing. And are you really going to wear that shirt? Well, this is what Jimmy handed me. I mean, well, I don't like it. I'm going to go, no. No, the belt's wrong. Everything's good. That was the first season. I went, well, wait a second. This is Scarecrow and Mrs. King. No. It was never anything serious,
Now, would you prank her?
Yes, I would. But a line just came into my head. Who I loved to really goof off with was Beverly Garland.
Yes.
She was no nonsense in that, she just loved to laugh. She liked to have a cigarette, sit out there and have a cigarette. And she was one of those old time.
She was a broad.
She was a broad. She was a real dame. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And she worked with everybody. And she did. If you actually look at her credits, she was in everything, but there's nothing could phase her. She had her hotel in the valley, Beverly Garland off of Vineland there. But if Kate would be in a bad mood, she was upset with something. And if Kate did that, because you know what, it's like all things. If Kate's feeling bad, we're all feeling bad because we're gonna.
Mm-hmm.
And when she's feeling great, everybody's feeling great. When you're the leads of the show, you literally carry the morale of the day with you.
Mm-hmm.
Bev would come walking in. Okay, what's wrong now? What's the problem? Oh, that's nothing. I tell you about the time when so-and-so and I had to Yeah, Dorothy Lamour and I had to come through this room, and I stepped on her dress, and suddenly everyone's laughing. You're together like a family. There's arguments, there's jokes, there's fun, there's everything that happens in a group of people that all know each other so well after a while. And you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's such
I can tell between you two. There's probably, oh my God, all kinds of drama. All kinds of drama.
All kinds.
And what's his name off camera there? What's his name off camera?
Oh, Kevin. Kevin's lots of drama. He's a sound guy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they're the worst.
I know.
Kevin, I'll just run some of this. I never met a happy sound guy in my entire career.
Kevin's laughing. Hold on.
You know why? You may. Okay. I'll tell you why, my friend. Every time, when we used to shoot here in the San Fernando Valley, there's 3 airports in the San Fernando Valley. And so is Warner Brothers and Columbia Studios and Universal. We're all there. And Burbank Airport, they come up off that runway and they swerve right over. So we're ready for a take. We've got our lavalier mics on. We're all set, ready to go. And then, that's not good for me. Can we stop right there? That's not good for me. You may be doing your best work. And he blows that take by going, that's not good. Could we have another one? But I'd go, you guys aren't happy, are you? I said, no, I had the director we're moving on. But I need one more. I need one more. I need a clean take.
Moving on.
But Kevin would never do that.
Kevin would
I'm
never
looking
do
at
that.
the corner of the screen.
Kevin is the happy, low-key sound guy.
I've met wonderful people,
Yeah.
Crews are always my favorites. You take care of your crew, Like on the weekends, sometimes I would buy the boys the grips. When we could do this back in the day, I'd buy them a case of beer and have it for Friday night. Now that was probably very irresponsible. Or exotic coffee trucks that go around, and I'd always buy those for the kids because after we're long gone and my wardrobe is all hung up in the closet and I'm in my car driving home. They're there for another hour or two, wrapping up everything, and they have to be there the next morning. I was taught this by Jim Arness, actually. I learned from him what it was to be the star of a series. And he certainly knew it because Gunsmoke was on for 20 years.
That's crazy.
Take care of your crew. Give them a little something or other, something personal. I know at the end of the year, we got like a coffee mug with from Jim to everybody got a personal coffee mug. They oftentimes do T-shirts and caps and things like that. It makes everybody more cohesive. And you have those little things like that. Everyone's wearing a crew jacket with the show on the back or on it. And it's amazing what that does for the morale.
Yeah.
I still have my old Scarecrow. We had 3 of them, 2 of them, and I have the corduroy gray one. It's kind of like a bomber jacket, but it's corduroy and a really, really bright sort of purple interior. I don't know what it was, but I have that. I've kept most of my crew jackets. I don't know if I'll give them. I have my original Tron jacket too, which was a members only one.
Oh, that's so funny.
Oh, wow.
We haven't even touched on Tron.
I know.
And I know you talk a lot about Tron.
That's how I met Cindy, and that was while that was in post-production that I met I did Bring It Back Alive.
And you said, hey, how about Cindy? Let's bring Cindy in.
Yeah, because I thought she looked the part.
Yeah. She's got a little Kate Hepburn, like she's got a little...
Yeah, she did, and she had that kind of feel.
Yeah.
And it worked until they wanted my character. When you're struggling in the ratings, they're trying some way to fix. What can we do to change it up before we give it up? Unfortunately, they let Cindy go because they wanted my character to have more availability, to have a love interest in the show, in an episode. Because before Lee and Amanda, we were kind of that way. I was forever chasing her and she was forever resisting. So And she worked she was like at the embassy.
Yes, she was like the
American
liaison.
Embassy.
Yeah.
And, yes. And that was a fun show. But Scarecrow made it. All the pain from losing that all went away immediately as soon as we did Scarecrow and Mrs. King.
And you had
It's what it should have been.
I was going to say, and so you finally, like, that felt like, hey, I've hit a place as an actor that I was trying
I
to
arrived on my own. Yeah.
And that's got to feel pretty good.
I wasn't under, James Arness, who was this titan on television, and Eva Marie Saint, and all the wonderful people that were the adults on the show. We were kids in the 70s. But yeah, I've done basically a series for every or two for every decade since the 90s was the last one was Babylon 5. Yeah. So I'm more than blessed, believe me.
And you've had these like very, like Tron is a franchise. You were one of the early franchises that sort of didn't know it was a franchise, I think.
I think Disney didn't realize they had a franchise. Yeah.
They
didn't know the truth, and they're franchise central right now. I mean, when it comes to Marvel and Star Wars and so on, and that's great. And now they've just done another Tron movie, and it was time to have a new generation do it.
I still think they should call you.
I know, but they do, and that's fine. I wish them all luck, and I said I had to say it because I was being pestered online.
Yeah,
like I cannot tell you. And when I do conventions, that's one of my highest selling photos and stuff, and most targeted. And it's a generational thing too. Moms and dads, they bring their kids, they watched it, and the original was the sweeter one of the
yes,
more darker and violent and everything as we went on. But that's okay. I think that, do I want to do that one again? No, I really don't. See, what I don't want to do, and I also said this about Scarecrow and Mrs. King, it's capturing lightning in a bottle. You know that phrase?
Mm-hmm.
We could never find that again. Even if it was a reunion movie, we could never find, we were people of that time, that place, that situation. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's hard enough to capture it the first time, that magic, that serendipity, whatever it is that makes something like that successful,
absolutely, Sharon.
A hit or something.
Yes, it's nothing that's really tangible. It's something, and that's the magic of it all. And when audiences respond like that, then you've got something.
Yeah.
Can you do that again 25, 30 years later? Probably not. Probably not. First of all, the writers aren't there anymore. And it was the writing.
Yeah.
Kate and I could probably do the phone book for you. But the magic of, Steve and Juanita, her group, I think, did the best of Scarecrow and Mrs. King. Then when they left, they just seemed to leave us all the time. I was always standing there waiting. Bye.
Everybody leaving.
Bye. Can you take me with you? No. Okay. Bye.
Yeah, I think she went to do In the Heat of the Night or something like that.
Yes. She was marvelous. And Steve as well. And she had that whole group. And then we had George Geiger and his team did a very noble attempt. But then how do we marry Lee and Amanda?
Yeah.
And it was quite a quandary we were in there. Seriously.
Yeah.
Quite a quandary. How do you marry off these two? Should we marry off these two? There's like the pros and cons of doing this. And oftentimes I think that could be the death of it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, we've lost it. And I did think there was something, how would we, even if we'd have continued, say Katie hadn't been ill, where would we have gone with this? How would we age into this?
Yeah.
It was a tough concept to make a series around in the first place. Okay, the one-off, the pilot, we got that. But how are you going to make this, and how long is it going to? So she had to become a full-fledged agent, but she still had to have her poor Dean, her boyfriend.
I know, poor Dean.
Poor Dean.
Thank goodness we never saw him.
I was heartbroken. I think in all those bar scenes, we should have had him down at the end of the bar, just this knockout drunk, just going, oh man, I had a career. She used to take me to the train, you know.
I did the weather.
I did the weather. I was a good weatherman. And then she left me, and I just, so.
Well, I mean, I think you could write this right now.
I know. I think we could have made a great spoof of it. But
yes. Maybe
I know there's a lot of fan fiction out there too.
There is a lot of fan fiction.
And I always tried to tell them, I can't read this, especially when we were still doing it. You know, how many lawsuits go on in Hollywood over that? Battlestar Galactica. Who was the I worked with him too, crazy guy. The producer writer of that.
Glenn Larson,
yes, was sued by George Lucas. Oh boy. Glenn. I did a huge pilot with him. We literally blew up northern Florida.
What was the name of the pilot?
It was called Rhodes Raiders. And it was a spoof like McHale's Navy, like all those comedies, military comedies, Hogan's Heroes, all those things. I think you can find it. I think you can find it on something like, not Tubi or something, one of those. I don't believe it ever aired. Yeah. And they spent $3 million on it. It was a great premise. But Glenn Larson spent probably $1 million of his own. Richard Lang, I believe, was the one that directed this epic World War II comedy.
Sure.
Well,
you know, it has been done.
My buddy Clyde Kuzatsu was my nemesis. He was this crooked Japanese officer that was doing every black market thing he could do on the side. And we were in the Philippines. Supposedly in the Philippines. We shot it in outside of Jacksonville, Florida. We had a lot of jungle area there. We had a young leading lady. I think she was in one thing, as I can remember. I think she went back to theater. We scared her to death. Anyway, I played Charlie Rhodes. I had been drummed out of the Flying Tigers through a false thing, and I ran a bar in Manila. And the Japanese invade, and I have to get out. And I've got my piano player. We were sidekicks, and he was.
It was clearly a Casablanca takeoff too.
We had every homage you could find. all those movies, even the Flying Tigers, John Wayne's Flying Tiger, and we had everything. I had a white sports coat on with a white beater T-shirt underneath it. Okay.
So a little
I always
Miami
had a cigar
Vice.
going. Yes. Clyde was so wonderful in it too, but we actually blew up an entire freight ship and sunk it in the harbor. And it caught the trees on fire and everything. They kept yelling, keep rolling. Anyway, like I said, we could have burned Jacksonville to the ground. Then we had the sort of dirty dozen. These guys were all in the loony bin. It was kind of an insanity ward. And so we had these two big weightlifting brothers that talked at the same time. I forget what their names are. They were some wrestling duel.
This sounds insane.
And we turned into Rhodes Raiders. It's hilarious. We put together all these old parts. They would have been great toys for kids of old airplanes and trucks and tanks. And we put them all mismatched together. We had the machine shop going all night long with, Andrews sisters, the little big bugle boy.
Yeah.
You know, the bugle boy from Company V. And I think the show could have gone. Universal loved it. And I think Glenn somehow scuttled it with his relationship there at Universal. They had a lot invested in that. We had a great love story in there too between me and a woman who was posing as a nun on the until she,
as they do,
until she wasn't anymore, and then she was a OSS agent. I was forever trying to find Scarecrow again.
Yeah. Do you remember working with Angie Dickinson on Policewoman?
Yes, I do. That's the kind of guys I played. Adults starred on the TV series, not the kids.
Yeah.
Today, it's the young people, or at least it has been in the 2000s here. The younger ones and the adults are the. No, we still had Quincy or Baretta. We still had all the cop shows, and we had all the sitcoms. It was still the parents, Bill Cosby. And so 70s policewoman, Angie Dickinson, I actually got an indication. First of all, I was in absolute awe of her. I was scared to death I was going to actually hurt her. But there's another dame for you sitting there. So where are you from, kid? You know, she was with them all the tough guys. Okay. She worked with all of them, and she was always played those kind of gals. And she was great. And I realized for the first time what kind of work that was to be the lead in the TV series as well. Because my last night was the night that I was going to kill her underneath the Santa Monica Pier. It was Friday night, that magical Friday night I'm talking about. And we're on location, and it's cold and wet. And James Wainwright saves the day by shooting me at the last moment. I've got her down there. I've got a knife to her, and I'm like this crazed, drugged out, whatever. And probably got some kind of monologue there. And why my mommy didn't like me or something, that makes me become a psycho. We're sitting in a car parked right next to the pier while they're lighting and changing the angles and things like that of the camera and lenses and things. And she's busily, I thought she knew all her lines. I did, oh my God, she doesn't know her lines. Now, what I didn't realize is this was the last night on this episode. She's got Monday morning staring at her, and she's trying to bone up on what do I do in the next episode? That blew my mind, the concept. I'm going, wow, she's already left me basically, and she's, on to the next thing. Is that what it's like? And yeah, that's what it's like. Good people. It was a wonderful time to come into the business. I think, there was a lot of the big movie stars in the Twilight's careers were doing television series. Like Garner went back and forth successfully. Jack Klugman. Then, of course, you had Robert Blake. I did Baretta. First thing he does, I walk up to him. They introduce me to him. And so in character, I can't say the last word. But hey, kid, he's looking up and down. He's looking up. And you tell me you're a good actor. I think you're a piece of I think my knees started wobbling, and I thought I was about to faint. I used to watch Baretta, that stupid bird he had on his shoulder, at home with my parents. This blew my mind that I'm standing here doing it, and he calls me a piece of shit. You know what I'm saying?
So were you
I later got to know him. He was neighbors with me out at a place called Hidden Hills where we used to live. We used to go ride horses together. I never mentioned that I was there. That was before he killed his wife. Okay, so that's enough.
Okay, all right, yes.
Well, first of all, I never would have thought that of Robert Blake as a horseman. So that's very interesting.
He was in those old B movies. He played Little Beaver. Never call him Little Beaver. Apparently, he would go murderous rage, along with Red Ryder in the Wild Bill Elliott movies. Yeah, he was a child star. He did a lot of Westerns.
Wow. And so when you came to Hollywood, it was during the time when there was still the contract system that studios still put.
Yes, it was.
Were you ever under contract with any of the studios?
I was briefly for MGM. I waited a year to do How the West Was Won. We did the pilot. No, it was like 8 months later, 9 months. We didn't do the rest of it yet.
Yeah.
And so I kind of had to sign on. I mean, Kitty went and did a thing called Super Train or something like that. And Chips, she did an episode of Chips with at MGM. Everything I did, it was all MGM. I had to sign with them. So that was kind of the last dying gasp, of the studio system, which, I think just knowing myself, I probably would have really liked that. To be a part of a studio. I remember Jimmy Stewart talking about it, and, they do 15, 20, 30 pictures a year. They stuck you in things sometimes maybe weren't the best, the highest quality for you, but everything you did was learning your craft and doing your craft. And they went to schools for riding, dancing, fencing, whatever was required, and elocution, all that stuff. So I think I would have liked that, the old studio system days. There was some, I always heard like Angie and those guys, They all talked about this stuff, and how different it was then. That's why it sounds like me now. I'm them now.
We all
It's
become
almost
that.
a business I almost don't recognize anymore. We don't even use those big old cameras anymore. Everything is on a small little thing on a tripod, a little tripod, and it's all digital now. Not used to big cans of film being put in.
Oh,
A big,
felt like you were making something.
Yeah. And then, or you're doing a scene and you hear this. We had a short ends. They put it in a short ends, and my best part of my performance just went. Anyway.
Melissa and I talk about that. We were at film school at the same time when it was still film and transitioning to video and digital. And I appreciate that I got to sort of be in both.
I got to tell you, more DPs I talked to all started with film, even in film school. My son Lee did. He did film school here in Hollywood. We were talking about this the other night, watching something, a streaming movie, and it's all dark. It's so dark you can't, and there's some emotional scene going on. You want to see the eyes. You want to see the people, right? And there was always some kind of source lighting. Is it moonlight? Is it something? But it's always something. Film noir. Look what they did back in the 40s. No budgets at all, just in black and white movies. Some of the greatest films in history are made in that period.
Yeah.
But more DPs I talk to, or you hear them ask, what was it like when we used film? Must have been something. Must have been really something.
It was really something. All right, what's next for you?
I'm doing an audiobook for Edgar Rice Burroughs' stories of John Carter on Mars. I'm one of a couple of other actors doing it. I just do little things here and there. I've got Blue Ridge, who was just on. I'll be going back in that next February, I hear. And anything could come up, right? I'm trying to, it's slower when you're this age. It is.
Well, and it's also just slower time. I mean.
Yeah. But you know what? I understand. I all those old guys and gals that I worked with, I understand them more and more now. And I was just a pup, just a punk. And it's just and it's been marvelous. When you have a few highs like Scarecrow and Mrs. King, it's a treasure. I'll always have that, and I'm sure Katie feels the same way. You imagine coming off of the phenomena of Charlie's Angels. We'll know what that's like when you're in the biggest thing going. You're the biggest phenomena in a medium such as television. You're reaching millions of people every night, and it's crazy. So, I have no regrets. There were bad decisions made. Everyone has them, Maybe we went the wrong way once, but I think it went the right way more times than not.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
That's good.
It's like crazy as that is. But I appreciate this, and we finally got it done.
I know. I'm so excited.
It's going to be a big two-parter, right, Kevin?
Yeah.
Big two-parter.
Kevin's like, I can't wait to edit this.
I'm going to take the knife to that guy like you can't believe. It looked like a 3-minute commercial. You can find me at Boxleitner Bruce. And if it has a blue check, I want to emphasize it. If it has a blue check, that's me.
Excellent.
There's a couple other guys out there. We can't seem to get rid of them. They just keep cropping back up. But they're always asking for money eventually. If you send the so-and-so money, I just want to ward off all fans, Scarecrow, whatever, that there's people out there that are trying to get your money, and it's ridiculous. I would never ask. And it's been great talking to you.
It has been so great talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Can't thank you enough.
My pleasure.
Yes, thank you.
So much. You too, Kevin. I'm not picking on you, man. I'm really not. I love sound people. Anyway, take care.
All right, you too.
All righty.
Adios.
Bye. For today's audiography, find out more about Bruce Boxleitner at Facebook.com/BoxleitnerBruce, and Instagram also @BoxleitnerBruce.
And he's on Cameo. So cameo.com/BoxleitnerBruce. I want to shout out again The Ultimate Fan's Guide to Scarecrow and Mrs. King, the book written by the three fans that we have a whole podcast about. Please go check it out. The link will be in our description.
If you're a fan of Scarecrow and Mrs. King and you don't have a copy of this book, you need to go get it right now.
Because are you really a fan if you don't have that book?
That's right.
You're certainly not the ultimate fan.
That's right. Exactly. And we're saying this even though we have absolutely no financial
We get
stake
nothing from that.
Yes, exactly. We just really love the book. So
We really love the
think you
book
will,
and
too.
the people who worked on it
Yeah.
so diligently for so many years.
Yeah.
That was amazing, Sharon. What a treat.
Another fantastic chat with another fantastic guest. It just keeps getting better and better.
Well, I was reminded as we were talking and he was telling stories and particularly about the sort of the fun of an 80s set. But one of the reasons I really like Bruce Boxleitner and many of the roles he plays, maybe not the murderous, abusive guys, which, of course, is a staple of 70s and 80s television. But I was reminded of Linda Bloodworth-Thomason in our interview with her, where we talked about the importance of benevolent masculinity as role models. And I think that there's a little of that coming off of, I think that's one of the appeals of Lee Stetson. It's very masculine, but ultimately basically reins in, some of that to be a benevolent protector and sort of a tonic masculinity instead of toxic masculinity.
Yeah, I agree. It's not something you always find. Sometimes a lot of times it maybe just tends to go a little bit too far, but it definitely did not in Scarecrow and Mrs. King. It's probably one of the reasons for its long-term appeal.
Yeah, I think so. And I think there is something to be said for a star that will co-star with a female lead and let her remain the lead.
Right.
And that's true of Scarecrow and Mrs. King. And that is not true on either Moonlighting or Remington Steele. Now, those are different shows, and Remington Steele is named Remington Steele, but Scarecrow and Mrs. King is named Scarecrow and Mrs. King. And I think that Scarecrow and Mrs. King remains more equal for longer throughout the show than either Moonlighting and Remington Steele does for their whole series.
True, but Kate Jackson did have the
Producer.
tool in her toolbox.
Yes.
Tool in her toolbox.
In her toolbox.
I can't say why can't I say it?
In her toolbox, Shakur. I mean,
Either way, yes, you're right. It helps to be the producer.
Yeah.
But she also got called out, as all of the women in these, sort of coupledom shows often did, for being difficult on the set. And I feels like difficult on the set was, I want to have a creative voice in the running of my show.
True. And they fortunately hired an actor who played the part well and also ended up being a great co-star.
Yes.
and they're magic together.
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty friggin' magical together.
Yeah,
Every time I go back and watch it, I'm like, holy crap. They're just magical. And
you just want to watch them being together.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess that's it for this episode. So as always, we hope 80s TV Ladies brings you joy and laughter and lots of fabulous new and old shows to watch, all of which will lead us forward toward being amazing ladies of the 21st century.